Prepare to journey through television's darker side, where these unforgettable baddies carved their place in TV history.
From cunning masterminds to formidable foes, our list pays homage to the characters who made us loathe them while secretly admiring their complexity.
This countdown isn't just about adversaries, it's a celebration of the intricate and lasting impact of television's most notorious wrongdoers.
Notorious! Hold on to your seats, subscribe to the channel, and get ready to revisit the most intimidating rogues in TV history as we unveil our top 4 villains.
Summit Squad assemble, because the Rushmore show starts right now.
This is the Rushmore show, where it's all about your top 4 and nothing more. Andy, it is the end of October. It's October month where we do fall TV. And there's a little holiday coming around called Halloween. And we figured we'd do a little touch of color for the show in the Halloween world. In this last episode, we did our top 4 spooky television. I think it's doing a pretty okay. It sounds like it's getting a good group of people. I love to see the comments and things. But today we're going to go and jump in even further and go with our top 4 villains of TV. What do you think about that?
This is fun, man, because I think villains, it covers such a wide range of types of characters, because we can think of obviously Halloween around this time. We can think of the monsters and all that kind of stuff, but just antagonists in general, I think, is what we're going to classify in with this.
I love that word, antagonists.
Anytime you use a word with multiple syllables like that, it just makes you feel good. So here's the thing. I'm going to give away a little bit of mine. I was really conflicted on this one because you guys know how much I love cartoons. But I literally could have gone all 8. Or actually, probably all 80 in the cartoon world. I could have just stayed there and had fun. So I'm just going to throw this out there. I've decided I'm not going to have a single cartoon on here. So I'm not doing any cartoons. That's crazy.
Not eliminating it from you guys. But I wanted to test myself and see what top 8 I could come out without naming the big bads in the 80s cartoon world. I'm excited. I'm excited because of that, because I'm going to bring on some shows today that I've probably wanted to mention in another show, and they just didn't make it. But hey, I'm excited. I think it's time that we should just get this thing on the road. We have an exciting guest, another content creator, another YouTuber, and she is in love with this type of content, and I think you guys will enjoy her. So let's get down to the brass tacks, man, and let's do our top 4 TV villains in history.
Let's get it.
All right, Rushmore show, we are here. It is top 4 villains. And man, there are some scary folks out there to be introduced, but we want to bring on someone who is likes to be scary, but she's not that scary to me. I think, Andy, good friend of yours, why don't you tell the audience who she is and what she's got going on?
Well, we are welcoming a first-time panel guest to the Rushmore show. Summit Squad, give a warm welcome to Tracy Rodgers from Nerd Squish. What's up, Tracy?
What up, y'all? I'm so excited to be here.
What's up, Tracy? Thanks for coming on the show. Now, Tracy, tell us all about your love of horror and spookiness, and then tell us about your channel, if you will, and we can get started.
So, as you can tell from my background, I may or may not like spooky stuff. Yeah. I have a font, I just love Halloween, all things horror, all things monsters. Specifically, I'm really in love with, as you can see here, I got Creature back here. I love all things Universal monsters, specifically the Wolfman. Big fan of werewolf movies, TV shows, all that stuff, which is a big reason why I started my YouTube channel, Nerd Squish, where I basically just take anything and everything that I'm nerdy about and put it all on the channel.
I love that.
Nice.
That's kind of what we did. We nerd out about everything, and we just like to talk. So that's kind of what we did.
So how do you guys know each other? Let's tell the audience that. What's the connect? I know the connect, but tell them the connect.
So back in the day, my husband used to play in a lot of local New Orleans bands. And my friend Andy here was the same. So we used to go to these shows, and he used to be back there drumming, jamming out. And that's how we met.
Funny story, though. I think the first time, and Tracy, maybe you remember this, the first time we ever played a show with them was it at Ashley's house? And was it someone's birthday? Maybe it was a birthday. I don't know who it was, but we played there. And it was like inside the living room or something at someone's house. We played a show.
You just unlocked a memory that I didn't remember.
And it's so funny because I remember the name of the other band that played too. Like, it's this weird. That was like our first, like, oh, we're going to the South Shore to play. Like, this is crazy. It was Tainted Oi. Remember?
Fun fact. It even goes back further than the connections are wild, because at that time I didn't know your band. I didn't know their band. And Tainted Oi, their bassist, is now my brother-in-law.
Oh,
let's look at this.
Keep it in the
family. Well, it's fun times, fun memories back then. And it's good time. So, hey, look, we're going to get into today's Rushmore. And again, now, Summit Squad, we are talking about villains. And like we kind of alluded to in the beginning, pretty much every topic we talk about, it's a giant pool that you can pull from. So I think the most important thing in any of these lists really is, what is your criteria? How do you limit it to 4? 4 villains on TV all the time is barely, not even half of 1% of the villains out there. So Tracy, we're going to start with you, but before you get into your Rosie, what was kind of how do you eliminate, what was your thought process, maybe criteria for making your list today?
So it's kind of, I think the main thing that I tried to keep in mind is my favorite type of villain, even as much as I love monsters, my favorite type of villain is an extravagant, over-the-top, theatrical villain. Like, that's the best type, whether it's TV, movies, whatever. That's my go-to. So that's kind of what I followed here.
So let's go ahead and get started. Your Rosie, your number 4, the line in the sand when it comes to TV villains. Who you got? So
Rosie, I'm going to open up with a character that was introduced in the 5th season of one of the longest running horror TV shows of all time. And I'm going to talk about Crowley from Supernatural. Crowley, he's not only is he one of the best villains from Supernatural, but he's just one of the best characters. Supernatural, because it's run so long, there's a lot of villains. But Crowley, he's a demon that was the king of the crossroads, became the king of hell in Lucifer's absence. And with that description, you're like, okay, you shouldn't like this guy. He's the bad guy. But the reason he's in my top 4 is because the man has charm, and he's just so funny. You can't help but love his just evilness.
So I get, I never, honestly, kind of a blind spot for me. Obviously I know the show is super popular and obviously runs for a long time. But what you just said about that, one of those things about villains that is so interesting is that you hate them a lot of times, but it's like, man, why do I like this guy? Why do I like this character in this show? They just add so much. So I'd be interested to watch that, because again, it just is one of those blind spots for me. So, Kirk, you got anything about that one?
Yeah, this show is on a long list of things to watch. I have watched probably about 15 episodes of this, hit or miss, because it went syndicated for quite a bit, and then it's been on for so long. And I know who Crowley is. I pulled him up just to make sure it was the guy that I thought it was, and yeah, he kind of reminds me of like Dave Matthews. He's but he is a good, cool character. I love this show. I actually used Supernatural in the beginning of the last episode because I'm intrigued to finish this. It's so long, and so I've kind of like pushed it off because it's got so many seasons, and I am a completionist. I just love to finish, and so yeah, I don't know a whole lot about him, but I know Supernatural's awesome. It's got a lot of baddies.
Fantastic way to start our mountain, Tracy. And look, your first pick.
Nice.
With the Rushmore.
Well, here's the cool thing. Neither one of us are picking Supernatural, so we're not crushing on that. That leaves us for some more room. But hey, I'll jump in. It's my turn. So here's my criteria for today. Villains. Tons of cool villains. I've already alluded to saying that I'm not doing cartoons. I literally could probably pick all cartoons, for real. I think they're some of the best bad guys because, one, they're over the top, but they're so iconic and I remember them so well. So I'm trying to figure out who would even line up with someone like Shredder, right? And or something like that. Who could I say that would do something in that effect? And I was like, man, I'm just gonna pick my four of my favorite shows that have villains and who are their most iconic antagonists. So basically I'm picking guys that I've seen the show. And I've finished all of these shows. And one of the reasons that I watched it was because of the bad guy. It is not any news what type of television show I like. I mentioned it last week. I love mystery. I love when there is a calculating deductiveness of the police or the detective. And my favorite Sherlock, and I'm going with Moriarty in the British Moriarty with Benedict Cumberbatch. There is plenty of Moriarty that I can go with. I have put Elementary on the show. I didn't really like that Moriarty character. It was actually a woman in that character, which was also kind of weird. But this guy is so calculating. He's so evil, and I can never tell what he's going to do next. If you've watched the Sherlock from BBC, they are very short. It's only like 4 episodes, and they've only done 4 seasons. So, but there is so much packed into these, and you honestly, what I like about the character Moriarty, you can't tell what his motives are. You can't tell if he wants to be good, if he wants to be an anti-hero, if he wants to be bad. Why he's doing it, he's just he's very much like the Joker, and he just wants to cause havoc. And I love it. I love it. I'm here for it. And I am picking Moriarty.
Again, Blindside, we've talked about this. It's something about British.
I know. That's how I knew you weren't going to say that.
Or whatever. It doesn't connect. I feel like
this is one of the only British ones I have. I've tried the Doctor Who. I've tried a couple other things. I don't hate them, but this show is top notch. I love it. I love every character on it.
I know they have a following. I know that people are diehard fans of that kind of stuff. It just has never worked for me. But I will say Benedict Cumberbatch is a very fun name to say when it comes to that. I'll give him that. Tracy, you have anything about
Eddie Smog?
Sherlock?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I have never watched any, Sherlock, really anything, but Cumberbatch is I agree, a fun name to say, but he's a very good actor. So that is a show that I do have on my list to watch. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's a really good show in that it's only 4 episodes, but you feel like you've watched seasons, and they squeeze a lot in. Actually, it's like watching 4 movies, right? And you're getting 4 parts of the movie, which is really cool. I can't wait till another one if they actually pull it off. Yeah, and it's full of cliffhangers and twists, and that I love too. So it's great show. All right, Andrew. Your turn. Who is your number 4? Line in the sand. What's your criteria? Give us all that goodness and get us started with villains.
So here's the thing. I number 1, I had to have watched the show. Obviously, this isn't just like critics' top 4 or whatever, and that's kind of how we do everything. But the second thing, and I kind of alluded to it in Tracy's pick, where there's something likable about all these villains. So there's like, I understand why they are the way they are. You know what I mean? For some reason. And there's like a human side to it. You know, it's one thing to have like a villain who's just like the baddest of the bad, the most powerful. And like, that's cool. And no knock on it. But for criteria wise, I'm just like, there was a human side to these villains. And that's kind of where I'm going to go with this. So I guarantee you no one's picking my Rosie. I'd be shocked if you knew what it was, because I will tell you, I highly recommend watching this show. It's a Netflix original. My Rosie is from a show called Lost Ollie from Netflix. And the character's name is Zozo. Again, you're not going to know who it is. And let me just give you a little bit of this. So the premise of this show is that there's this, it's kind of this live action, but also CGI, where this kid loses his toy, right? This kid loses his toy, and he and he's going on this quest now to find it, right? But this toy has a life of itself, and it encounters these other toys, and he finds this one guy named Zozo, who originally is like this big. He's helping him. He's going to guide him through all this stuff. We'll come to find out, and I'm giving you spoilers. I'm sorry, but still watch the show. He's actually a pretty bad guy, but he has got an amazing backstory. He was like a Jack-in-the-Box kind of toy, and he was at this fair, and he was right across from a booth from this little like ballerina doll that he like fell in love with, right? And he was just so obsessed with, and they loved each other, whatever. Anyway, everything gets messed up in their life and they lose each other. He gets knocked out of this box or whatever and sews his own legs together. It's a crazy thing. But watch the show, and Zozo had to make my list. I'd be shocked.
Dude, I'm getting lots of Hug and Bear vibes with this picture. Like, Toy Story is like dark. Toy Story dark.
It's a very dark Toy Story. That's what I'll say. It's very much like that. It's like a mini series. It's only like 4 or 5 episodes, but it is so well written. It looks amazing. I definitely recommend go watch this. Again, I'd be shocked if you've seen it in the comments, let me know. But we watched it as a family, and it's a ton of fun. So
you watched it with the girls? So it's not that dark.
It's not. Like, I would watch it with them. They kind of lost a little interest in it because I think it got a little deep for them. It's not like I would not watch it with them, but I don't think they really cared for it as much. But very much like Toy Story, but a little bit darker and grittier. That's what I'm going to go with. So again, had to throw that out there. Sometimes with the Rosie, you throw that wild card pick out there, and Zozo is my pick.
That is super interesting. I thought I had gone through all the dark corners of Netflix and watched it all, seen it all. I have never even heard of that.
Yeah.
So what I would say is I love that he's voiced by Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah.
And that guy, I mean, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He's in Lost. He's in so much stuff. I love that guy. He's pretty cool.
I will tell you this. Look, I definitely cried multiple times watching this show. It is deep.
All right, I'm watching now. You got me hooked now.
The whole story is fantastic.
All right, well, that is our first level. No crushes, which I'm not shocked. But let's see what we roll into mountain, and into our second layer of the mountain, which is TJ Jazzy Jeff. Tracy, if you haven't been around, you've been kind of watching. That stands for Thomas Jefferson. So TJ Jazzy Jeff is our third on the mountain. What would your next pick be?
All right. My TJ Jazzy Jeff. I'm going to go with one of the most evil vampires in the Buffyverse. I'm going with Angelus, or Evil Angel, as some people might call him. Okay, so Buffy is obviously a show full of a lot of super creepy and creative villains, and obviously a lot of vampires. But Angelus was always just the most terrifying to me because he didn't have a big agenda of like, oh, this big elaborate plan to take over the world or whatever. It was much more personal. He was just ruthless, out to attack Buffy and the gang for no other reason than just to get to her. And it was, also not only terrifying, but heartbreaking because she was the big part of the reason why he became this evil version of himself. And so, she couldn't go to battle like all the other villains and just go fight him. It was like this whole thing of this pain and this guilt of like, okay, I turned him into one of the most terrible vampires of all time, but I'm still in love with him. How do I fight this?
I know this one for sure. Did you watch Buffy, Andy?
Kind of like.
Did you watch Angel?
I watched a few episodes here and there. I've seen them.
Yeah, so I watched Buffy a lot back in the day. Sarah Michelle Gellar, and the movie was one of my favorites. So I kind of followed the show quite a bit. I love this pick. He is a Benjamin for me, and he was on my long list. He's not in my 8, but he was there when I was contemplating. I have watched Buffy and I watched parts of Angel, but mentioned last week was Bones. So David Boreanaz, or whatever he said, he's a pretty iconic character when it comes to all this, because he's the guy in Bones that Jamie was talking about dressing up in the show, and he is he's an awful person. So Angelus is, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me, Tracy, he's kind of that bad angel, whatever. But then when he becomes Angel, he's kind of got his like human form, right? He's doing something like that. And if I remember correct, is that right?
Correct. So when he becomes a vampire, the first time he becomes a vampire, he is Angelus. And then, he goes through these centuries of just this, murdering and just all this terrible stuff. And he murders a gypsy, and the clan puts a curse on him to restore his soul, because when you become a vampire, you lose your soul. And because when he gets his soul back, he feels the guilt of like every single person that he's ever wronged. And that's what leads him to become Angel.
That is a great pick.
I will say this just as the last comment here. I don't think that if you lived in the 90s, 2000s, that you could have escaped seeing some Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, I think that that's just part of that era. So,
well, I'll just throw this too. One of the things that I remember most about Buffy is that Pee Wee Herman wasn't Pee Wee Herman, and R.I.P. Pee Wee Herman. But in the movie, he played a vampire, which freaked us all out. We're like, that's not him. Well, how can he do this, right? But anyways,
and
Paul Rubens.
The best death scene ever.
All right, man. So I'm going to jump into mine. My last pick kind of alludes to this pick. All right. So my last pick kind of alludes to this pick, which is kind of the reason I but I kind of have a feeling that this is also another safe pick that you guys are probably not crushing on. You may know this show. I don't know that you know the bad unless you've actually watched the show, because I didn't know. But I'm going with another mystery show. I just finished it not long ago. It is called The Mentalist, and the big bad in that show is called Red John. Now, here's the cool thing about Red John. He's very similar to a Moriarty type character, and Patrick Jane is very similar to a Sherlock type character, but he is an old carny guy. He's an old magician and whatever, and he is really good at deduction. Well, here's the cool thing. He starts to serve and help the FBI and whatever, and he kind of helps solve the crimes. But Red John is a cult leader who has talked other people into killing in his name. And so Red John has murders and deaths all over that Patrick is trying to chase down. And he ends up killing Red John like 3 times. I'm giving spoilers away before you finally find out in the last episode of the last whatever who the actual Red John is. There's a red circle that's kind of chasing, and he's not in every episode. Like there's other murders, and all of a sudden you see a murder, and then it's got this red smiley face, and you're like, oh, here's another Red John, and we go on this journey, and he is crazy. When you find out the twist, I won't give the twist away, but it's pretty crazy. So Red John, another still in the same world as Sherlock. I love this stuff, but really, really, really dark character.
I just know that today you're going to mention a bunch of them that I have blind spots because I don't, those deductive reason, like.
That's the only ones left. The next two, you will definitely know my next two for sure.
The fact that you're cutting out a bunch of cartoons, that narrows down my expertise a little bit too. So, but I know you've talked about this show before for sure. Some of these bad guys.
It's definitely one I would rewatch for sure.
I'm Googling and looking at it, and I'm like, he doesn't even look like a bad guy. It's interesting to see, like, he just looks like some random guy. So,
well, it depends on which one you're looking at because there's about 10 of them. Well, because it's pretty crazy.
You are hitting me with all the shows that like I have never watched. I've heard of them and they're on my list, but never really got too much into that subgenre. So,
well, I could say this: you'll know my next one for sure. You might not have watched the show. My George. I think you guys both should know it, but maybe not. But anyways, that is my TJ. All right, Andy, you're up.
Yeah. So this is a shocker. This is definitely going to be a shocker, and not because of the show that I'm picking, but maybe because of the villain that I'm picking.
You're not picking the main guy; you're picking somebody else. I see.
So I'm going to go to one of my favorite shows in this kind of genre of things is The Walking Dead. Right? It's a huge, right? I mean, cultural phenomenon when this thing comes out. And I think that since we've already mentioned him multiple times, I'm just not going to pick Negan today. And I think that, look, if you pick Negan, absolutely, totally agree with you. I think he's the baddest of the bad. But when I'm thinking of criteria of who do I sympathize with as a human, I got to go to the original guy that just, messed me over. And I'm going to the Governor. The governor in Walking Dead was just David Morrissey, right? He's bad. He's horrible, right? He's just this egocentric, terrible bad guy, right? But when you come to find out the reason that he is the way that he is, or the main reason, like all of these people experience this whole zombie apocalypse at the same time, and just they go about it a different way. Everyone has their own individual story and kind of their motivation behind survival or whatever they're doing. And his is the loss of his wife and his daughter, right? And the fact that when you find out, and again, we've said it a few times, we're halfway through the mountain at this point. We're going to give you a ton of spoilers today. But if you haven't at this point, this is on you. This is on you if you haven't watched it yet. But the scene.
No, don't do it.
The scene where you see that he's got his daughter as a walker, like chained up on a leash and stuff, and he's like trying to talk with her, and she's gone, right? She's a walker, right? So, and he's like crying with her and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy is just. He's a human. He's got a family. He's faced so much trauma and all this. So the Governor's my guy. I gotta go with him. And again, I would never complain if you pick Negan as your top one there, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit. We're gonna go with the Governor today. What you got?
Yeah, I'm not shocked, and not shocked at all. And every list I pulled up, both Negan and the Governor were on it, especially if it was a newer one. Again, still in the same episode. So, but I do know who this is. And, you got to be under a rock if you don't know most of the characters in Walking Dead, just paying attention to social media. And I remember when he was out, like everybody was just kind of freaking out about him. But yeah, good pick. I love this pick.
And I love, even though I have not finished The Walking Dead, I kind of fell off of it. But the Governor was so good. Like, I'm a huge Walking Dead fan. Like, I've read the comics and I loved specifically I know this is not on TV, but with the book that went through his background that explained all that like sad story that like made you sympathize with him, which then you felt bad for sympathizing with him, but he is such a good villain. I love that pick.
Look, we are halfway through our mountain, which means, just like always, it's time for a nice commercial break. We'll see you guys on the flip.
We're here to take control of our anger. Let's start with a little role playing. I'll be you be a Powerpuff Girl. Hello, Bubbles.
Oh, Mr. Mojo.
I'm sensing some hostility. Why are you so upset?
I go to the mini-mart. I see this. Does anyone ask Mojo's permission? No. Does Mojo make any money? No. Powerpuff Girls take everything!
Calm down.
We'll see how calm you are when I destroy the world.
Let's do a little perspective check. Mojo's upset over a keychain. Now he wants to destroy the world. Is that reasonable?
Sounds reasonable.
Who here wants to destroy the world? What are we here to take control of?
Our universe!
No, our emotions, our anger. So let's take all our anger and put it in a little ball and let it go. Release your anger.
Cartoon Network, the best place for cartoons.
San Hanna-Barbera Penitentiary, one of the largest and toughest maximum security prisons in all of Burbank, home to some of the world's most notorious criminals. In 1969, 17 villains were sent to San Hanna-Barbera. All of them are masters of disguise. Most of them are middle-aged men. None of them are very smart.
Watch the pretty coin of gold, and you will do as you are told. You are getting sleepy, very sleepy. You are a very sleepy man.
You want a book of what?
I'll take a Reader's Digest.
For the Scooby-Doo villain, San Hanna-Barbera represents the end of the line. Due to the harsh living conditions, cramped cells, and iron-fisted discipline, hundreds of escape attempts have been made. All of them looked good on paper. Most of them involved months of planning. None of them ever worked.
One of those morons left the front gate unlocked. We could walk right out and kiss this dump goodbye.
No, that'll never work. It's too easy. What we need is some glow-in-the-dark paint.
Aye, and the film projector.
Dry ice. Dry ice.
Hope is a rare commodity at San Hanna-Barbera. The inmates are all serving life sentences with no chance for parole. The interesting thing about San Hanna's parole board is that there isn't one.
I'm a different person now, and I think the parole board knows that. In fact, I just got my real estate license. I learned that scaring people away from property only drives down the value of the land. If I'd only known that 30 years ago. But my parents were carny folk. They did the best they could. Give me a minute, would you?
And so it goes at San Hanna-Barbera Penitentiary. Behind this fortress of concrete and barbed wire, the Scooby-Doo villains have a lifetime to come to terms with their crimes against society. Each inmate shackled with the knowledge that they'd probably still be free had it not been for a certain group of meddling kids.
All right, Summit Squad, we are back from commercial break, and it's time for one more commercial that we're going to read to you. Which is the best kind of commercials, right? Kirk, tell everyone about our friends from Playing Games with Strangers.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm rocking my D&D shirt just for those guys. If you know anything about them, here it is. Playing Games with Strangers is a family-friendly actual play podcast where indie voice actors get together and play tabletop role-playing games. You can listen to the adventure unfold as they roll dice, slay monsters, and have fun, all at playinggameswithstrangers.com. That's playinggameswithstrangers.com. Yeah, they basically play Dungeons and Dragons and other board games live on their podcast. It's pretty cool. So go check out those guys and tell them where you found them. All right, Tracy, it is. I'm interested to hear what your link is. This is the second tier. This is like not the best, but right there. Who's your second favorite villain in TV history?
Okay, so for Link, I'm going a little bit newer, going with a villain that single-handedly made all of us scared of the like chiming of a clock. And that is why I am going with Vecna from Stranger Things. You know, Stranger Things, it started in 2016 as like a science fiction, more or less, story. But with this fourth season, they really dived into that horror aspect. And with that, they created one of the most just interesting and creepy villains in recent history. Yeah. Both versions of the character are played beautifully by Jamie Campbell Bower, which is, that name is a mouthful. But I just love the idea that we finally got to learn more about the Upside Down with this character Vecna and like why it exists, how it was created. And you have this character out here brutally murdering people in order to open these gateways so they can, you know, have the Upside Down and the real world connected. And it's the design of this character is just so unique and creative. And a lot of it was practical, which is a big reason that I love this character, because Stranger Things is really big into 80s. And what's more 80s and horror than a practical makeup? And it had a lot of similarities to one of the most iconic villains and iconic slashers of all time, Freddy Krueger. And not only that, but Robert Englund himself played the older version of Vecna's father. So, you know, overall, this character, the more his story unraveled, he just was so fascinating. And the fact that he haunts his victims with these, you know, horrifying visions of their past traumas and then just these terrible, brutal death scenes. I mean, it was terrifying. And he's in that red mind layer, but ultimately he's a cool looking villain with a cool looking layer, and you can beat him with your favorite song, which is just, it's a good soundtrack. What's not to love?
Yeah. And, you know, it brings up the iconic, you know, Master of Puppets getting brought into it and everything, you know, it's an iconic moment. Yeah, I totally agree with this pick. Super terrifying. And then the voice, like just everything. I remember, so starting off season 4 being like, what? Like it totally shifts. Like you said, like there's just like this, it is super just horror the whole time. But yeah, this is not the villain that I want to see walking down the hallway towards me at any point. So totally agree. And Kirk, I know you haven't gone this far into it. I'm sure you've seen the.
Yeah, I know who Vecna is, and I put him on the show in the edit last week. And I actually watched a couple videos of the actor getting dressed up for this. It's a pretty cool makeup and all that. He reminds me, look, immediately, you said Freddy Krueger. I immediately think of Nemesis from Resident Evil, the video game. He just looks really cool. He sounds cool. Again, over the last 7 days, I haven't watched Walking Dead or Stranger Things, although I thought about it. But so I'm at the end of season 1 and on basically both of those shows. But I will finish both of those, and my goal is to catch up before season 5 finishes. So yeah, I would like to do that. But yeah, great show. I knew this would be on. I knew this would be mentioned today somehow or another. Well, look, I'm going to jump into mine. If you've been around long enough, you know that I have actually talked about this character a couple times in this show. I've talked about the show plenty times. It was in throughout TV. I've talked about it, and I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit. You know, we make our own criteria. We kind of do what we want to do. But I'm kind of going for a twofer here, and I'll explain why in a second. I'm actually going with Tony Soprano and his mother, Livia Soprano. And if you know anything about The Sopranos, if you've watched it, you think Tony's the mastermind, but his mom is the one really controlling a lot of that stuff behind. And his mom would have been much bigger character, but Nancy Hawthorne, I think that's her name. Nancy Hawthorne actually died while they were not while they were filming, but in the process of filming The Sopranos. But if you know anything about The Sopranos, it's New Jersey mob, right? And Tony is the mob boss, and there's a lot of killing. There's a lot of unfortunate death. He's kind of the anti-hero, if you will. But his mom it kind of reminds me of like Psycho or Jason. This crazy mom is behind the whole thing, and she's out for blood and vengeance all the time. And it's this old chick. You're like, what? Anyways, if you watch The Sopranos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And man, one of the best iconic endings of all time. Very polarizing.
Not surprised you picked this one. This is definitely. I think you've undercut it. I think it's been 5 or 6 times.
So Tracy, I watched this while I was in Iraq, so it has a big nostalgia moment for me. All of us, they were sent out to us in the desert, and we watched season 1, 2, 3, and 4 back to back every single night for months until we finished it, and then I came home and finished the next 2 seasons. So it is a big part of my kind of nostalgic world.
That's awesome. That's yet again, you have put another one that's on my list that I have not watched yet. So
let's see if we can completely go 4 for 4. I will say I've shared this before. I have not watched The Sopranos, and I know it's like one of the biggest TV shows in history when you're going to mention those. I just never did. I think when it was out, I was like too young to really care about it. And then it's like, just, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it was one of those first ones that were on. Oh, I did it in theme music as well. It was one of those first ones that was on HBO, like lots of cursing. They even had some sexual innuendo. Well, not innuendo. They had sex, and they also had the violence. So you probably, I was in the 20s. You were probably in your early-ish teens.
Yeah, that was
starting to come out. So it doesn't surprise me, but it is definitely a great show. It's a great show. Yeah. All right, Andy, finish off the link.
Well, very similar to your link, surprisingly. If you know me, if you've watched a show at all, when it comes to TV, I've got to put somebody from Nickelodeon on here. I mean, Nickelodeon's got to make an appearance on my list. But the question is, where do I go? Because there are a lot of good antagonists and villains within the.
Oh, here's the cartoon pick.
Here is the start of our. Well, really, Zozo was a cartoon, but let's go classic cartoon. I'm going to go to Hey Arnold, and I'm going to pick Helga Pataki. Helga Pataki is my link. Here's the thing. To my criteria, there has to be some human side to this person. If you know this show, Helga's kind of like this bully, but also like secretly like in love with Arnold at the same time. But bullies. She's got like a very creative, like poetic side to her, but then she like plays it off with like this very, kind of like hard exterior and everything too. But if you've watched it enough, you realize that she comes from a pretty broken family. Now they're together, but they don't pay attention to her at all. She's got an older sister that is like Miss Perfect. Olga is her name. And, she does everything right, but they don't really pay attention. They're too busy with work. I think her dad was like a beeper salesman, and mom was like just too busy for her. So they kind of neglect her. And so in a way, it's like, man, we know that a lot of bullying, doesn't just like one day we don't just wake up and say, hey, I'm going to be a bully. Like there is some kind of family trauma that could be associated with that. And not to get too deep on this, but I mean, that's the likable side. And then you see, even with all of that hard exterior, she still has a soft side that again, she doesn't show other people. She doesn't tell them about. but we do, as the audience, get to see that side of her too. So Helga Pataki, I've gone on record to say that Hey Arnold would probably be one of my favorite of the Nickelodeon classic cartoons that comes out. So she had an list.
I had you pegged for a Nickelodeon cartoon, and I had about 3 or 4 in my mind, kind of bumbling around, and she was one of them. She fits right into that scenario.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch a whole lot of Hey Arnold, but I know Helga. I mean, right off the bat, when you said it, I started laughing because I'm like, oh, absolutely. Good pick.
Tracy, I saw you laughing. You like Hey Arnold?
All right, football head. All I got to say is that you totally aged us by saying that her dad was a beeper salesman.
It was. There's
probably people on here like, a beeper? What is that?
Beeper. What's a sales?
I'll page you with the right answer. Right. Remember when we used to do the codes upside down, and then we did the numbers. You had to figure out the code.
Yeah,
I did that not too long ago with my kids, and they were like, "What are you even doing? I'm like, what are you even doing?" But yeah,
I love it.
The beeper salesman. That's a good pick. All right, we're to the George. George, our number 1 top villains of all time. So I'm thinking that these got to be some big baddies. So where you at, Tracy, with your number 1 ever?
Okay, so I know that I'm known for the Halloween and the spooky, right? But I'm going to go a little different with this pick because my George is going to be one of the most iconic villains in all of history. I'm going with the Joker from the Batman animated series. I mean, how can you think of villains in any category and not think of the Joker, whether it's TV, movies, comics, video games? He is the best villain because he goes against, in my humble opinion, the best superhero of all time.
I'm Batman.
He is just pure chaos for the sake of being chaos. Half the time, I don't think he even has a motive. He's just like, hey, I'm going to make Batman mad today because I'm bored. And then specifically with Batman the Animated Series, this show, I mean, I'm a huge Batman fan, and this show is why I love Batman. All of the characters and the Rogues Gallery. I mean, every 90s kid, I feel like, was in love with this show. But specifically this Joker, you have to give it to Mark Hamill for making this Joker stand out amongst the rest. I mean, every Joker, I think, in their own way is amazing and perfect, but Mark Hamill's laugh. As the Joker is one of the most beautiful sounds in the world to me.
I think that we could have a list of Rushmore of the Jokers, right? Like we could.
Oh, absolutely. We could have Batman baddies. We could have Joker adaptations.
Joker, yeah.
Like,
and we could do that, and that would be pretty insane. But yeah, this is a no-brainer pick. Great.
So this is why I made my criteria the way I made it. To me, the Joker is almost untouchable because of Mark Hamill. And I was like, man, if I put him, then I have to put this. And then all in my head, all these building blocks were falling apart. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to eliminate that. So maybe some foreshadowing when we do villains of cartoons. He's there. And this cartoon was my number 1 cartoon of all time. So this is my George for that. If you watch that show, it's on theme songs. This cartoon is fantastic. It is a work of art. And Mark Hamill, like you almost forget that he did anything else. And he's pretty important in other things. I mean, he's such a great character in this. And he went on to have a long voice acting career mainly because of the Joker. But man, fantastic pick.
He was in SWAT Cats. He did the voices.
Yes, he was.
There you go. So also played little bit part in some space movie with light swords and things.
Yeah, and I don't think I didn't almost put a space movie that guy on there because they had a cartoon and a TV show. But yeah, anyways, good pick. I love it. I love it. So,
Kirk, you're number one, man.
My number one. Okay, so let me paint the picture as I'm resetting our timer. I'll paint the picture here. I'm asking the family. I'm like, hey, number one bad guy, tell me. And so we're going through this list of things. I haven't hit my timer yet. I know. My wife throws out a couple shows and she says, what is that show you used to watch all the time? Core memory unlocked. And I said, oh my gosh, it has to be my number one. Okay. Has to be number one. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. It only had a couple of seasons. I wish it would have had much longer. You would know if I said, save the cheerleader, save the world. I'm going with Heroes in their main bad guy right there, Siler. Man, now listen, if you have not watched this show, shame on you. If you don't like superheroes, okay, whatever. But this guy is maniacal. He is a clockmaker, which is funny. When you started to say the clock ticking, I was like, okay, because I haven't seen Vecna. I was like, she's not going to say Siler. He's a clockmaker. Now, here's this show. The show is people find out that they have superpowers and they're superheroes, and they start doing all this. You got the good, you got the bad. It's almost like a comic book coming to life. And this guy is a clockmaker, and he is infatuated about how things work. And he starts to open up people's minds, especially the other superheroes, and learns how they work. And he takes their superpowers away and kills them. And it is crazy what he does. He turns from Gabriel Gray into Siler. He's the main bad guy in the whole deal. And he is taking everybody's power, and he's becoming this superhuman superhero. I love the show. They have the little Asian guy that is Hiro Nakamura, and he goes back in time. So it's got this time jumping back and forth. Anyways, trying to stop Siler is the whole deal, and obviously save the cheerleader. Heroes, main baddie, Siler, which is also Zachary Quinto, which is the Spock who became Spock because of this. And he ended up becoming Spock. Yeah. So there you go. Number one for sure, Siler.
So this is another one. I've seen episodes of this. I definitely didn't watch it through, but that sounds bad. Not because I was so against it. The guy who I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that at his apartment, I would watch SNL all the time when it was coming on. We watched Heroes together. So, I watched some episodes for sure. And yeah, this guy was pretty bad. So this is a good pick. I'm shocked that you mentioned this because I don't think we've ever really talked about Heroes.
No. And again, when I said in my original thing, I should have said it before. It's just something I haven't watched in a long time. And man, as soon as we said it, my wife's like, we're watching that together as a family. I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it. So pausing on the Stranger Things probably, and I'm probably rewatching.
You're never going to watch these shows, man. You're never going to do
it. Dude, I watched The Office for you. Tracy, do you know Heroes?
6 years.
So 4 for 4. I have not watched any of your picks, but I will say that this one, I remember seeing the commercials when it was coming out and thinking, oh, wow, this is a really cool concept. And then it just was forgotten. But I will say out of all the 4 that you picked, this is the show that's going to be on the top of my list to watch.
There you go.
Dude, I love it so much. It is so awesome. I actually bought the season. I loved it so much. My wife bought this graphic novel for me for Christmas that year, and she's like, oh, I saw this, I need to get it for you. And then the next year she bought part 2, and then the show ended up ending. So that's the 2 graphic novels that go with the season. I love this show. Hero's my favorite. It's spelled Hiro, which is ironic because he's a hero, but he's one of my favorite characters. Anyways, yeah, definitely watch this. Andy, finish off our mountain.
Well, I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but I'm actually going to crush more today. I thought we'd make it all the way through a clean sweep with no crush mores. This was the only one that I was like, I'd be shocked if this one didn't. And my George, give me the Joker from the Batman animated series. He is the number one. And I think, Kirk, if you would have, like you said, if you would have not done these cartoons, eliminated them, he'd have been on your list too. This would have been a triple Rushmore. So, I mean, everything you've already said, Tracy, about the Joker. We want to talk about just villains in general. He's going to make the Rushmore of top villains of all time and across the board. But specific to TV, this animated series, I don't think I put it on my Rushmore because I knew you, Kirk, were going to mention it, and I just wanted some diversity in the episode. But absolutely, this guy had to make the list. And even to that kind of, you don't like him, like, because you can necessarily like sympathize with him. I mean, there are some little things like that, but he makes this show. He's a main part of this show as the villain. You know, the title of the show is Batman, the animated series, but man, I keep coming back for the Joker. Like, what's going to happen this time? And I think, you know, the cartoon, obviously being able to play up kind of the whole comic-y side of things, you know, like some of this Joker stuff. And look, I love the Heath Ledger kind of rendition of it, and sort of more of like the psychopath and that kind of whole mental thing. But there's also that side of that comic book, you know, Joker comedy kind of thing, the gag kind of thing that he does, side of it too, that we love so much also. So again, everything you already mentioned, everything we've talked about, I'm not, you know, reinventing the wheel here, but
so let me just say this.
Okay.
Theatrically, movies, TV, books, comics, you name it. When you think of villains, there is a list of people, and to me, he's there. I talked about him in the DC comic portion. He's the only bad guy I think I put in that. You can even go back to the 60s television show with Caesar, whatever his name is. He's phenomenally awesome. And yeah, just a great bad guy altogether. I love when they bring him to the hospital and you're seeing all the hospital time. But the funny thing is, he's really nothing. Like nothing. He's just the opposite of Batman. He like has no powers. He's just ridiculously crazy. And I'm like, why isn't this guy dead yet? I don't understand it. Like he makes me angry all the time. And then you see some of the other out, you know, when he's off the rails as like, and actually gets powers with the Killing Joke and all those other things. Those are even more when you watch that, see those comic books. But dude, Joker is phenomenal. Good pick. Yeah, he was on my mountain originally. He started it, and then I kind of weeded it around as I put criteria together.
Yep. So, well, there we go, guys. We have our top 4, but lucky for you, Summit Squad, if you're watching this right now, we're not done yet. Which, you know, Kirk, what we got coming up?
So it's all about the Benjamins time, which is our honorable mentions. If you've been around long enough, the Benjamins is Benjamin Franklin. Number 5, the guy who almost made the mountain, but didn't. And so this is our honorable mentions. And this is where we just give a little love to some of our other favorites that we think should get a nod. And here we go. We'll be right back with your Benjamins. See you in a second. It's time for all about the Benjamins. And Tracy, you're up first because we go in the same exact order. Here's the thing. It's Tracy, me, Andy. Andy, me, Tracy. Tracy, me, Andy. And back to you. Tracy, you will have the first pick and the last pick. And so in between there, you get to pick back-to-back picks. Who's the first person or first villain that is worth mentioning that nobody has mentioned yet?
All right. First one I'm going to go with is the Trinity Killer from Dexter, because he is the perfect example of someone you wouldn't expect to be a villain and yet is the most terrifying villain.
Here we go. I'm going to go with my next pick. This is a show that I almost put on last week. I'm going with the main antagonist from Sleepy Hollow, and I'm going with the Headless Horseman, which, if you know about anything about this show, it is based on Ichabod Crane coming back from back in the day, and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are coming. It's insane. Check that out.
All right, I get a back-to-back pick here. I can't believe I went through this list. This is a nod to our good friend David Finn. And you weren't a 90s kid if you didn't love Rita Repulsa from the
I was shocked you didn't put her in your list. I was shocked you did not put one of them in your list. I almost grabbed the big Zord.
That shriek and all that stuff that she would do. Anyway, so Rita Repulsa. And then with my next one, let's go back to Nickelodeon. Let me throw in a couple more Nickelodeons that didn't quite make my list. And maybe the one that you thought I would put, let's go with Roger Klotz from
Yep, there he is.
Klotz would be my next pick.
I definitely thought that's where you were going with that. It is not a shocker. Now, hey, last week I mentioned a cool show about serial killers, and I am definitely pulling out their main bad guy, the cult leader himself. Kevin Bacon chases him around. Joe Carroll. Joe Carroll, freaking maniacal again. Just really bad guy. So, hey, Tracy, you're up for 2.
Okay, so next one I'm going to go with is Omni-Man from Invincible. You got to love Invincible, and he is just the most powerful, insane superhero. Gotta love it. Next one is going to be a little bit of a deep cut from my favorite TV show of all time, Big Wolf on Campus. I am going with evil werewolf Lori. I just love it.
And if you watched last week's episode, you'd see that Tracy put a little comment that this did not make our show.
I was very upset.
Yeah. Hey, you talked about deep cuts. Look, immediately when I thought of heroes, I changed my list because around that same time I was watching another show that I wish made it past its 2nd season called Revolution, and I am going with their main bad guy, Sebastian Monroe. And he is basically the leader of the end of the world. So, pretty awesome show, Revolution.
Man, I get 2 more, and so many of mine are not going to get picked. Man, it's like, what do I go with now? Let's keep it on the Nickelodeon train because that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to ride that train, and give me one of the worst bullies of all, Angelica Pickles from the Road.
Oh, so you took all 3 that I was thinking possibly.
And then I'm going to throw in a 4th one. Maybe a little bonus action with my last pick, my final pick. Give me Plankton from SpongeBob. Plankton.
Dude, I just saw that in a list, and I was like, no way, Plankton. That is hilarious.
Just do it. Why not?
I love it.
Hilarious. Hey, I'm going to go with another one. I have the disc set of Heroes, and right next to it is the disc set of Prison Break, and my main baddie from there, Theodore Bagwell, better known as Teabag. That guy is sick in the head, so he's out of prison. Yep, Teabag. That's my number 4, and I went 8 for 8, baby. I knew it.
Did it.
I did it.
All right, Tracy, you have the last one. This is, you have every other villain in TV history. What's the last pick? The last one to make this list.
Okay, the next one I'm going to go with is the Axeman from American Horror Story Coven, because he brings one of my favorite New Orleans serial killer, New Orleans legends to life. Like, who doesn't love a serial killer that won't kill you if you put on jazz?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Only I liked jazz. You know what I mean? Like,
I admittedly only watched one episode of any of these, and it was Coven. That's the one, because it was New Orleans, and I was like, yeah, I'll check it out, and it's freaky. That's a freaky show. And I think it came out like right as I was walking this journey, and I kind of felt maybe I shouldn't watch this. But anyways, have you watched that, Andy?
I haven't watched any American Horror Story. I feel like I'm under a rock here. But
brutal. It is so scary, brother. Yeah. Look, as far as television, yeah, if you want to see a real horror story, check that out.
Well, look, hey, that was fantastic. It was a great mountain today. Tracy, thank you for joining us. Super great time having you on here. Hey, let everyone know real quick, where can they find all your content?
So obviously the first place you want to look is on YouTube to watch our videos. I'm also on TikTok. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We do have a Discord, although I'm not real great about
Hey, once you figure out how to be great about it, let us know, because we have one too, and we are terrible.
It's a difficult one. It really is.
We are terrible.
Well,
hey,
look,
while you're there, go join all of our Discords. The whole Culture Box has one. Everybody we kind of follow. Pick and Preacher is going to be on soon. He's got a great one. But yeah, go follow Tracy and all her stuff. Tracy, what are you doing right now? What's your theme? What you talking about going different places? What's your latest videos?
So currently, I just did my second weekend at the largest Renaissance festival in the United States in Texas. So we will have a vlog coming out for Pirate Weekend that we just hit up this past weekend.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
So
yeah, well, hello. Thank you.
We are finishing up October. It is the end of the month, and the rent is due. And next week, just giving you guys a heads up, a little change. We're going to have our updates, our spotlights of the conventions that we did over the last few weeks, and they are amazing. Go check them out. If you are from those conventions, you might see your face on these shows. Check them out. We did about 50 different Rushmores all across the conventions. Maybe yours makes the cut. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's supposed to be food, but be praying for Andy. He's going to Argentina to save the world. So let me just give him a high five for that. And Andy, you know how we do it. Tell our friends good night.
This is the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top 4.
Top 4.
And nothing more.
Peace.